Thank you so much for agreeing to talk to us about Tangerine. Um,
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Tell us a little bit about how you started with Tangerine.
Well, I've been working with Sean, as you know. I've been working with Sean for a couple of years now. I worked with him on a film called Prince of Broadway, and I'm working with him on some future projects, and we've developed some projects together that we're looking forward to shooting at some point. Um, I guess about the summer of 2013, he basically decided he wanted to speak to his kind of all-star team, which is myself, who worked with him on Prince of Broadway, Shi Ching So, worked with him on Takeout, his co-writer from Starlet, Chris Burgosh, and he wanted to collaborate with the people that he had made successful films with all together on one film. And we all kind of threw a lot of ideas around, but he was really drawn to this one area of Los Angeles, basically the intersection of Santa Monica and Highland, which is where Donut Time is, and there's a lot of transgender sex trade there, and he found it really fascinating, and asked, we basically went through a bunch of different ideas, and that was the one that he really wanted to do, and so we were from the summer of 2013 kind of bracing ourselves for winter of 2013, which is when we went into pre-production in November, and we were doing pre-production from the East Coast while he was on the West Coast, and he was out there doing research. And Shi Ching and I went out in the end of December, just kind of after being there for like a week and a half, 2 weeks, we just started shooting. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, it gets us started. You shot for 23 days,
That is correct.
and do you mind telling us like how much money you had, or why you chose 23 days?
Well, look, 23 days is. I love the fact that we shot it for 23 days because Prince of Broadway was a $35,000 film that we shot over 40 days. Kinyarwanda was a $500,000 film or $400,000 film that we shot in 16 days. Neither of those conditions are ideal. When, for example, with Prince of Broadway, $35,000, 40 days, rule of thumb, and I'm sure you've probably told your students this, but the less money you have, the shorter your film shoot should be. Things like food, things like transportation, things that you don't expect take up so much of that bill. So and with Tangerine, we had $125,000, very limited budget. But we wanted to do as close to a normal shooting schedule as possible. And for most independent films, I typically recommend, like a 20 to 23, 24 day, film shoot. You'll find that even on films that veer out of the independent world and, a little bit higher budgets, but it's an ideal shooting schedule for a 90-minute film. And so I was very, very happy with being in that place, not rushing a film like with Kinyarwanda, 16 days because we were trying to beat the deadline on a grant, or not lingering forever, waiting for one bad thing to happen after another, like shooting on Prince of Broadway. This worked really, really well for us, and it worked with our timing, our budget, and all that stuff.
So you said in your initial statement that you developed it and that you started with a place.
Yes.
Sean seems to sort of be drawn to places first, or am I wrong there? That place seems to be that a world that is defined by, there's a subculture in a place, seems to be a place where things starts. Was that Prince of Broadway as well?
A place, repeat the last part, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just curious, like, where do movies start? He started
Okay.
Tangerine with a place, a corner where there is transgender sex trade. Prince of
Right.
Broadway, which these people haven't seen, was also took place on a street corner or in a certain neighborhood. But then it has, both films have very strong characters. I think it might be interesting to the students to hear when you said you developed the film,
Right.
and you started with place. How does that work?
Well, Sean is generally drawn to location first, and I think that statement that he's made many times, which he's always drawn to location, gets misinterpreted a lot, because locations include the things that populate it. especially for someone who's creative and a filmmaker. So with with Prince, he wanted to choose an area that wasn't gentrified in New York, and there's very few places that haven't been gentrified at this stage. And with LA, he wanted to choose something that was just very, very raw, that nobody had ever seen before. And he lived 2 blocks from Santa Monica and Island. And he drove by that section every day. And when he would go by there, he knew just by the edge and the tone of the area that there was a story to be told there. So the physical place of Santa Monica and Highland and Donut Time, and the presence of the people in that area drew him in. And it was then he would go in and try to find this story. So when he went in to try to find this story, he would walk through the area with his co-writer, Chris Bergosh, and they would encounter the different folks who were working, the sex trade, people who were at the LGBT centers, people who would hang out at Donut Time, and he would just kind of look for ideas and look for stories. And at one of these day trips, he encountered Mya Taylor, who plays Alexandra in the film, and she was at the LGBT center and just hanging out on a bench talking to friends. And he went up and talked to her for a bit and just realized immediately that this woman needed to be in the film. And from that point, she introduced him to Kitana Kiki Rodriguez, who plays Cindy in the film, and they formed a really good relationship with Sean, to the degree of sharing a lot of the story. Pardon me, a lot of the stories that would populate the lives of all of the people that were out there. They would talk about the culture. They would talk about what they're up against. They would talk about just what how they survive. And from that point, he was able to develop the story. And he when I say develop the story, I kind of plant my tongue in my cheek when I say that, because Sean chooses what most people think are very big ideas, and they tend to be, but he chooses very simple stories. This is a story about a girl who had her heart broken, and wants revenge. Prince of Broadway is about a guy who is raising a child by himself. It's 3 Men and a Baby. It just happens to be a West African street hustler in the lead. So he chooses those, and the reason he does that is to show audiences how universal themes are and how alike we all are. So that's, hopefully that made some sense.
So he gets inspired by places, then does research and finds characters. But let's talk about this story thing a little bit. Do you get involved as a producer in deciding which is the right story? Do you have conversations about story? Does he work with Chris exclusively, or Chris and the people he's doing research with?
No, he collaborates with everybody. It's very, very important to him to kind of have all eyes on, all hands on deck, that kind of stuff. And so even, on a day-to-day basis, we talk to one another about ideas. And we've written together too. I co-wrote Prince of Broadway, so we all are very collaborative. And Chi-Ching co-wrote Take Out. So we all come from a place of trying to find the pieces of these people that we're seeing that we want to explore. So for sure, we're all collaborating. We're all writing. We all don't get writing credits in this film, but we all did some writing. We all did some resolutions and things like that of scenes. But yes, it's a very collaborative set at all times.
So let's talk a little bit about the themes and the story. You said that this is a woman scorned, that this is a story of a woman whose boyfriend has done her wrong, and she's looking for him, seeking revenge. But as I understand, Kiki is nominated for the Best Actress, and Mya is nominated for a Spirit Award for Supporting Actress, correct?
Right, that's correct, yes.
How about this, just for sake of argument? Could it also be told as a story about it's Alexandra Maya's character trying to preserve her friendship, and she's drawn into this difficult circumstances watching her friend. I mean, I think that friendship is also a huge part of
Oh,
this
yeah,
movie.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's those are the two things we always talk about. You know, running parallel to one another, and it is a story about friendship. You know.
Yeah, I think um, here's my agenda, just so you know where I'm going with this.
Sure, sure.
I'm going to try and talk to talk through some tools with the workshop participants about building interesting characters or doing character
Okay.
research.
Okay.
And I have some tools that I use as a producer, but I'm very curious to hear, do you like, I mean, there's an argument to be made that there's the hero's journey here, that you know, that somebody goes off on a journey looking for somebody and learns a valuable lesson and returns back to where they started. It, you know, it begins and ends at donut time, and a lesson has been
Right.
learned. Um,
Right.
but what tools do you use? I'm not going to tell you which you know what you did. Tell me what you did.
Um. Well, I mean, in terms of
Are you looking for
storytelling,
conflict? Are you looking for theme?
I think I think for Sean, and when we're working together, yes, there's always going to be some conflict. We are trying generally, and this is hard because we like to break the mold all the time. Anytime you pick up a camera, you know, whether it's with Sean or anybody else, you want to move away from the old and do something revolutionary. But I think, and I endorse, and I think that the three act structure is incredibly valuable to to filmmakers. To the degree of, I mean, are you familiar with Denis Cote's work at all?
I am not.
Um, he's a French Canadian filmmaker who always likes to just play with that spaces and always says there's no story, it's just this. But I believe that even in those films that don't have your standard beginning, middle, and end, you can isolate a three-act structure somewhere, even if it's about nothing. So I think that there is always that component working, whether we recognize it or not. And so when we're looking at reality and looking at the real stories that these people, have in their lives, I mean, you get up in the morning, I get up in the morning, we go to bed at night, we start in the same place, we end in the same place. All these things that happen in between, are essentially some sort of a hero's journey on a daily basis. And I think that when you're dealing with reality and social realism, that yes, the three act structure and the hero's journey does play a role. Um, so I feel like thematically, we're looking for the day-to-day life, but we're looking for the day-to-day life components that are going to make the story engaging. We knew we wanted this to take place over one day for budgetary constraints, but we knew that that could make it interesting, especially starting and ending in the same place. There's clearly, all of those, same. I mean, I think for probably more than any of Sean's. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think Sean does actually end up sticking to a three-act structure. He would kill me if he heard me
Yep.
say that. But I think that he does in most of his films, and I think he did in Star, and I think he certainly did in Prince of Broadway, where there is that, there is the call to action, and all of those, the call to action happens in the first 2 seconds of the film, and it's all very, it's there if you break out your.
But you're not thinking about it when you're working with him, or are you? What do you when you're
We're not actively thinking about a hero's journey in any way, shape, or form. But we are thinking. We know from the beginning, that we want it to. We know what we want the journey to be. We're not actively going. This is the hero's journey. We're not having that. I think that Chris probably sticks more to that. Chris is a huge Disney fan, so of course, with all of those animated films that he loves and emulates so much, there is that those elements are there at all times. So he writes, of course, from that perspective. With that. So I think that Sean allows that to sneak into his work, and it was the same with myself and Prince of Broadway when I wrote that with him. I wanted to hedge a little bit more on the comedy side because I was from the big budget blockbuster world of, of movie watching, and he was from the Mike Lee, kind of very wry world, and it created a nice balance. So, but no, I don't think there's necessarily any. I don't think on a big level. We're not thinking about it on like a Spielberg level. Like these are, these are the components that we need. I mean, I think that we're very cognizant that they're there, but we're not actively chasing them.
So do you do character discussion? Do you talk about like what this character wants, or
Yes.
and so you're meeting with real people, and are you taking notes, or what's the process like? Like on a day-to-day basis, you've decided on the location, you're starting to meet some interesting people. When did you decide that it was that it was going to be the search for the guy, and she's just gotten out of jail?
Um, well, we knew that there was. She told us a story. She said it wasn't her own story. But she told us a story
This
about
is
a girl who had gotten. This is
Maya.
Kitana Kiki.
Oh,
Yeah,
Kitana Kiki. Okay.
Sorry. She told us a story that a friend of hers had gotten out of jail, and this happened. Sorry.
We'll edit all this out. Don't worry.
Yeah, this had happened. This had happened to them, and and that they had wanted, and she said, if that had ever happened to me, I would go find this girl and I would beat her down and I would do this and I would do that. And so Sean was like, well, wait, but maybe we make that part of the story, and it became the crux. So there we have the journey. The journey was going to be and it was going to be very geographically correct as well. We did start in the correct, like the spot that she says she's going to start in, and she works her way back down, and we tracked her for a couple of days with this beat down. So we followed that. That was our the initial journey, and then all of these other stories that were going to happen in between, whether it be breaking into the hotel, whether it be Maya singing in the in the club, like all of these things, we started to drop these different things in. We did know, I mean, structurally that we wanted to include a lot of that stuff at the beginning, but yes, Maya and Kiki were able to draw on more realistic experiences. So we allowed them to dictate how their characters would behave, what the tone of their characters would be, with obviously a little bit of help from Sean. Now, Sean would workshop all the scenes with them because this was her first time in front of the camera, so we wanted to make sure they were getting it right. But with the newer with the acting characters, like Karin, who plays Razmik the cab driver, is in Prince of Broadway. He's in Starlet. He's a non-actor, but he's worked with Sean on every film, so that that definition was starting to kind of go out the window.
Yeah.
He's an actor, yeah. So so of course he looked for motivation, and he developed traits that would be specific to this character. Mickey O'Hagan, who plays Dinah in the film, who, by the way, I think rarely gets enough credit for her performance, because I think she's dynamite, but she's so kind of buried between these great performances of Maya and Kiki that she gets overlooked a lot. But she came from a formal, acting background, and she came to it, really wanting to nail that character properly. We think she did, but so yeah, there was a lot of discussion. There was a template for the pimp. There was a guy that we just knew who was out there and treating the girls like shit, and we got James to meet with this guy and just hang out with him for a while, and he came back with that performance. So yeah, there's a lot of character, like in terms of the actors, there's a lot of notes and ideas that we're giving them, but all of the street people, all of the people who were depicting people on the street were either from the street or based on people off the street. So we never really had to look that far for the inspiration for our non-actors, or rather for our actors, and for our non-actors, a lot of this just kind of came fairly natural, because they were out there.
Let's talk about that for a second. You said you workshopped with Kitana Kiki and Mya, who are non-actors.
Right.
What does that mean exactly? Like workshopping? You're not filming them, or are you using the camera? Are you rehearsing scenes? Are you just talking about characters?
In the workshops, some of it was taped. I don't know how much. There was a tiny bit that I saw, but mostly it's it's old school stuff. I mean, they're setting up chairs to resemble a bus, or setting up a bench for them to sit on and have a discussion, and they would just run through all of the stuff that had been scripted at that point, and they would run through all those lines, get themselves comfortable, and this is the process when he's workshopping, when Sean's workshopping with his actors. He's not just workshopping them, they are workshopping him as well. And because he wants this to be so natural, this is the stage at which we go in with our, cisgender, white guy dialogue, and we are told, no, I would never say that, and this is what I would say, and this is how I would say it, and then we revise things at that point, especially if it works, comedically or dramatically or whatever. So that workshopping session is, again, a very collaborative session, whereby everybody is just kind of figuring out what these characters are going to be.
So, again, this is in the weeds, but I think it's fascinating to the filmmakers here. So, you chose a place, you started doing research. Chris and Sean, who are going to write the screenplay, are taking notes. You come out with Shiching. You're meeting people. You're talking about it. Is there a script at this point? And is it 90 pages? Is it how does that process of what's on the page and budgeting and scheduling become sort of part of this process where you're sort of gathering stories, working with actors, workshopping?
Well, it's interesting because with Sean, everything starts as an idea. You meet the people out there, and you start to develop the stories based on how they're going to carry it. What he does is a thing called a scriptment, and that's first, and that is part for any students who don't know it. It's part treatment, part script.
You better go deeper. What's a treatment and what's a script?
Okay, so a treatment is basically the short story version of your scripted dialogue. It is a little expositional. It's it will tell you the story without getting the language from the characters.
So not much dialogue, but written in paragraphs, like a
right, and it will tell you
book report.
Tell you the story from beginning to end. All of your 3-act structures, your theoretically your 3 acts within the 3 acts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So this is a writer's tool that writers do prior to writing a full script, or when they're trying to sell an idea, they'll write it this way?
Both.
Mm-hmm.
Both. I mean, it's very, very, very helpful when they're trying to sell, but it also becomes the template for what their story is and the outline for their story.
And how long is it? How many pages?
It varies. 12 to 15 is a good length, I think. I've seen them as long as 60 pages.
Yeah, Hitchcock wrote some like 80 pages.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them have been, some of them really are novelizations of the screenplay. But then there's the script, which is the screenplay, and then that is just the dialogue and with little notes and ambient kind of cues. A scriptment basically will take you from your first frame to your last frame, and it will start as a treatment, and then it will get to key dialogue. So you will start, Mya and Kiki are 2 transgender sex workers. They're sitting in, in a donut shop, sharing a donut, and they look happy to see one another. Mya, Merry Christmas, bitch. There's, you've got both there. You've got your story being told as a story and then key lines. And Merry Christmas, bitch is a line that we knew was going to be one of the key lines in this. So that's kind of what's happening. And we don't know necessarily everything else that's going to come out of their mouth until we workshop it, and then we go back home and we, develop the script further so that it becomes a script. But coming out to LA, we were coming out to a script mint at the beginning. But by the time we shot, there was a full script.
So they had worked up a script mint before you guys, the producers, came out, and then there was something that you could sort of be part of the process of
Right.
finishing to full dialogue. How long was the full script that you shot from?
80 pages.
So they're
80 pages.
shorter than maybe a traditional Hollywood movie, but that's
Right.
because you knew
The film is 88 minutes long. So.
Right. So your film is shorter than some Hollywood movies too, is what you're
Right.
saying. And
Exactly.
and but you left room for improvisation, or was it all scripted?
Oh, we still left room for improvisation. Even with the script, you're going to run into those moments where, you want to get out of the scene in a different way. You suddenly go like, well, this isn't working. Let's try something new. Some of the stuff that wasn't scripted, for example, was like the cab stuff. Like, he's driving all the different, the different passengers around.
Clu Gulliger.
Yeah, Clue came out of retirement for this. We were blown away. We loved Clue.
Maybe you should let them know who Clu played in the movie. Those who saw it.
So Clue played the Cherokee. He's the old man in the back of the cab who tells the story about how he got a girl's name. And he's just, telling the guy to drive wherever he wants to drive and moaning a lot. Clue was in a TV series called The Virginian many years ago, and then on top of that, he plays a pivotal role in what I consider to be one of the most important films of the last, 50 years or so, and that's The Last Picture Show, which is written and directed by Peter Bogdanovich. I think we wrote it, yeah. Peter Bogdanovich, and Clu Gulliger plays the man who takes Sybil Shepherd's innocence, not virtue, but innocence. Somebody else takes her virtue, and then he takes her innocence. And he just was a dynamite actor back in the day, and just kind of fell off the radar for a while. And he was also in The Killers too.
Yeah.
Such a great actor.
And so you're saying he improvised that sequence that wasn't written?
Yeah, he improvised that sequence. Yeah.
So you just put him in the back of a cab and just said,
"True story." Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He was like, I want to, and so anytime you got him alone, he was talking about how he was like, his background is, Native American. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah. He tells us all these stories, and then like, wow, okay, so that was a real story. He's like, yeah, of course it was a real story. I'm like, wow, okay, cool. But yeah, he improv that scene, and he was a joy to work with, absolutely a joy to work with.
We got a little off subject, although I think we're talking about this process of writing and including people.
Right.
So you have an 80-something page script, and you've been working with the actors. You sort of know your locations. Do you have a budget and a schedule in the traditional sense? Do you start to do that?
We have a budget in the traditional sense in that we have a bank account full of money that we have to work with. We just don't know how we're going to spend it. It's funny. I spoke about this a couple of nights ago. The way that we make films is and I say we, I mean Sean and Chu Chang and myself and Chris. We kind of go into it knowing how much money we have, knowing what we have to spend money on, assuming always that we will never be able to spend that money on the things we want to spend money on. And we just kind of go play, and knowing that we have limitations. And we always pretend that we're all working for free. Because $100,000 is not a lot of money. But and we've made $30,000 movies too. So I mean, um, so when we got the money, we knew that it would cover a lot of. We we get on the phone, we make our calls, we find out how much it's going to cost to, get our sound guy out there and his gear, and how much it's going to cost to rent a crew house, and how much it's going to cost to, do our car rentals, and there was only locations that we had to pay for. We didn't do any formal permitting because the iPhone is not really uh, uh, classified as a camera in the. I'm sure it is now, but at that time it wasn't. So that helped us with our footprint. But so yes, I mean we have a budget. We have it managed by the time we get out there, and we know how much we have to really play with. I mean, we spend all of our money before we get there, or at least half of our money before we get there, on travel, on team and stuff like that, and then we hope that our food money isn't going to run out. We hope that our $100 a day for our actors isn't going to run out. We calculate it pretty well, but yeah, I mean, we go super cheap from the very beginning, and that's how we do this. And it's not like we're doing it on the fly, but we just kind of are very, very, very conservative about every penny that we spend and get as resourceful as we possibly can. I mean, we substitute important equipment for ridiculous, options that we just cobble together. You know.
Like your lighting equipment was 3 lights and some stuff from the 99-cent store, I've heard.
Yeah, our lighting kit was it was a little battery pack and he just brought it in a suitcase from New York, and yeah, he just pull it out and hold it up, and that was it. That's our other DP. He would do that. Yeah, we have two DPs. One's lighting one time. It's like, I mean, everybody was wearing a lot of hats. I mean, have you heard the story about our dolly?
No.
Our dolly shots. Our dolly shots, which are the shots that open up the film, where they come walking out of the donut time, and it's a beautiful shot. I love that shot so much, and it's shown on his 10-speed bike with a Steadicam, and the phone and a Steadicam, and So I mean, we just there we go. We saved how much money? $500 probably on a dollar.
There's a couple of shots. You go up high, is like would be a crane shot, like you're above the first floor of a building. Is that a broomstick, or how'd you do that?
It's a paint stick. Yeah, it's basically like the paint rollers that you get.
Yep.
Just got spent like $8 on one of them in a paint store and put the camera on it. That's how we did that.
You raised a couple of points about budgeting. First off, you commit. You're going to shoot 23 days. Did you tell the crew you were buying them out for 23 days, or how'd you hire the crew?
Everybody was from New York, so well, I mean, our key, like our DP, our second DP, and our sound guy, we're both from New York, and we just basically said, can you come out for 25 days? And we hoped that we could get it in at 23.
But they agreed to a fixed fee for 25 days.
Yeah, there were flats for everybody. Yes.
And you were gonna work 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day. What did you tell them?
12 hours.
5 days a week.
Yeah.
And they were
6.
6. Yeah. And they would stay in a house that you would rent rooms for them, and there would be one house where all the crew would live.
Yeah, it was myself, our DP, our sound guy, and our and Chris, the screenwriter. We all stayed in the same place.
And you said you go out and play, so you've got you have the crew for 25 days. They brought their rigs with them. You bought their equipment came with them.
Right.
You rented rental cars. Did you need other movie equipment? Did you need any, was there a truck for anything, or is it all just brought in rental cars and the crew brought their own equipment?
Rental cars. That was it. And walking.
Okay.
I mean, Iron Strauss, our sound guy, we were close enough to set that he would leave like he liked to just kind of have zen moments in the morning, and he would leave like a half hour before everybody else and just push his sound cart down the street to your location, for that 30 minutes. Go get himself a cup of coffee. So I mean, yeah, with that we were all, there was no trucks at all. Sean had a station wagon at the time. That helped.
And so, did you have every day that you went to set a shot list or locations scheduled out? How'd you plan for each day?
Well before that, I mean, before we even got to LA, we knew kind of the order in which we were shooting. We knew that we would only have Karin, who played Razmik, for 4 days. So we knew we had to shoot a lot of stuff over those 4 days. We knew that we did a lot of his stuff at the end of the film, actually. We knew that we knew how long we could have donut time for. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of scheduling done before we got out there. And then when we got there, yeah, we would do shot lists. I mean, what Sean's version of shot lists would be, which is basically, it's really in his head, and you don't know until you get on set. And we're going to be working with film in the next movie, so I want something more formalized. But because this can get very complicated. But we would go knowing what scenes and how much coverage of each scene we wanted. Out of those 2 or 3 hours that we would be shooting. But very frequently there would be like, okay, let's do a reverse shot. Let's do a let's do this differently or something like that. And a lot of times but it was like just writing stuff down, just kind of like changing throughout the day, and then things would get struck from that list. So there's always an idea list. So.
Let's because some people here don't know what coverage means, or may not know what coverage means, and don't know what a shot list is, maybe. Let's just, you said that you shot out Karin scenes in 4 days?
Yes.
And so that means you had a taxi for a couple of days, 3 days with him? And you were inside his apartment for a day or 2?
We were, these were a little bit longer days.
Yep.
I mean, there were still 12-hour days, but we would shoot, God, how did we do that? Maybe 4 days? We might have done 5 days, but we shot all daytime cab shots.
You shot them in 1 day?
Yes, we did. We basically did, they got into the cab in front of the crew apartment. All the actors met at the crew apartment. They got in the cab at the crew apartment, and they would drive like a 5-block radius, and Sean would shoot that scene, and that would be it.
And who is in the cab? It's the 2 actors and a DP, or is Sean in there on the floor? Or?
It's Sean and a DP and the actors. Usually Sean Sean, DP, and the 2 actors, and then in the trunk would be our sound guy, Ivan Strauss.
And this was a movie cab that had been you rented, or was this a regular cab where he was in a real trunk? Or
this was actually a movie cab. Yeah.
Okay.
We rented.
So.
But yeah, so we did all daytime. We did, and that was pretty quick when we shot all the like the woman and the with the and also so all of the interactions that he has were shot. We only shot 4. It was the Cherokee. It was the old woman with the dead dog. It was the vomit scene. And I think there was one more, maybe, I can't recall. But then the scene with the girl talking about how bad the cab smelled, and the girl who was taking the selfies, that was shot after everybody had left LA.
Right.
Sean just got another cab and got a guy to drive these girls around and just shot those scenes.
Did you ADR Karin in, or he's not even in those scenes?
I don't think his voice is heard in those scenes. He's in the scenes. You see the back of his head. Actually, he does have a conversation with one of the girls. But we got that dialogue from him. We knew that we were going to need it later on. So we did and then we did the Anna Fox prostitute where he picks up the girl, the real girl. you know, and is shocked to find that out. So that I think was the same day or the next day. It might have been the next day. Then at night we would shoot all of the night driving scenes. You know, we just did. I think the first night what we did was we did the family stuff, like where he was in the house with the family. And then the second and third nights that we had him, we did donut time. And then the fourth night, we did pickups. And by pickups, I mean additional scenes that we might need somewhere in the film. And we're not sure, but we just go out and we shoot them of him driving around or yelling at people or picking up a customer. And so we did those pickups, and we also did this scene where he goes up to the front of the club to talk to Joey, the doorman, and said, "Is this girl here?"
Yep.
So that was his schedule, and then he flew out the next morning. So it was 4 days.
Okay. And so you had him for 4 days, and
Yep.
and you know that he's, let's just make it easy, or maybe hard. You know that he's going to have to do these. I guess he's only in the apartment that one continuous time. He only makes one visit home, and
Right.
so you could actually have the women on another night in that apartment. You probably did.
Yes.
Okay, so
We actually didn't. No, I don't think we did.
so you shot
Um,
all those
I
all
think we
those.
just sent him. I think we sent him home early, actually, after or something like that. I'm not sure how we ended up
Okay,
doing that.
but you have to cover the scenes where he's home in his apartment, and
Right.
and so was there a shot list for that where you knew that this is going to be the master shot and we're going to shoot reverses, or did you shoot just the footage you needed? We know he's going to enter, and then we're going to cut to this. How do you choose to cover a sequence like he comes home for dinner and then he leaves?
Um,
Or do you know? Because maybe you weren't on set that day.
no. I was that was definitely one of the days that I was on set, and I mean, because I did split my time a little bit, not as much as I have on other films, but so yeah, I mean, we did go in. That I remember we went in with a very clear idea of what we were going to do in terms of we did a long masters of all of that stuff because we just wanted to make sure that we were getting again the coverage, the scenes that we needed, and if we lost something somewhere, we could pick it up somewhere else.
So you wanted to have a master shot that had the essential information. Plus,
Yes,
you had planned in advance that there were shots that you probably were going to use that weren't the master, and so you needed to set up for those and shoot them tight.
right. And the interesting thing, the reason why we were incredibly meticulous about these scenes in particular, when we were dealing with the family, and we were dealing with the argument with the family in Donut Time, and those were from the very beginning scripted to the T. And the reason why all of that stuff is the most meticulous stuff we did is because none of us speak Armenian. But we wanted to make sure that we knew what was going on at any given point because we certainly did not know what was being said. So that was like super important to us. So that's why we were really careful about the master shots, the reverses, the covers, all of that stuff, just to make sure everything was still being done exactly the same way.
Okay, so there are those two big scenes with lots of characters. The climax in Donut Time, was that also uh, sort of shot in master, or how did, because there's a lot of movement around in there. That's
Oh
cutting.
yeah. No, that was definitely shot in master, and that's one thing. Of all of the scenes in the entire film, well, not of the entire film, Sean knew that no matter what our story was going to be about, no matter who was going to populate it, no matter what we ended up with as our hero's journey, it was ending in that room with a lot of people, and they were all converging on the same place. And so that's where that was something that was interesting because he knew where it was ending before he knew where it began. But yes, with that scene, I mean, it was we did the whole scene right from the very beginning. Did a full master, two cameras shooting at the same time, a full master, and then we did all of the reversals, all of the other stuff. Then we brought in the baby. We only had Ala and who played Ala Tumani, who played the mother-in-law, and Luisa Narcissian, who played the wife, for a limited period of time. So we made sure that we got all of their scenes in one night, and just kind of did it without them the next night. But there was, yeah, I mean, we did a lot of, that was a perfect mask. That was a perfect mask.
Yeah, I love the wife of that sequence. The fact that she did that all in one night, because you see that she's torn between sort of being jealous and mad and wanting to hold her marriage together, and not and the uncertainty of what happens if she lets her emotions go. I think she really got that. I thought that was really a nifty little, you know, a small role, but a nifty little piece of work.
Right.
Cool. Maybe we should. I have a bunch of more questions, but I'm feeling like I may be excluding the students and talking about things that interest me. Those of you who've seen the movie, do you have any questions about the process? I'm going to ask him about pitching a little bit, and I'm also going to ask about the technical stuff of shooting it. But do you have any questions about writing it that we haven't touched on, or working with actors? Or any questions at this point? I promise you they're here. They're just being very, very polite. It's not just me in my bedroom. No questions? Sean has given several interviews where he said he fought having to shoot the film with an iPhone, but Emily's question, I think, is about Sean has acknowledged there were benefits, and one of the benefits that Emily's heard about is that the actresses said that there was an intimacy or a lack of sort of a feeling like you had to load up to be in a movie because it was a little iPhone and it was right there in your face. For one thing, you couldn't use long lenses, right? You had to be you had to be close to everybody with the anamorphic lens you had, right?
Yes, yes.
Can you talk about the process of shooting with an iPhone and the negatives and the positives?
I mean, the negative is not film. I mean, of course, that's the negative. The positives, there are a lot of positives. I mean, we did it for budgetary reasons. It was not a gimmick. We did not set out to try to be pioneers in any way, shape, or form.
Although, can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
The legend is, and I think this is true, but tell me, the legend is that you screened at Sundance and then told the audience it had been shot with the iPhone, and that was a secret. And this was, I think, brilliant marketing. If whether it was a gimmick or not to shoot, I think the idea that people got to appreciate the movie and then got to sort of have that sort of eye-popping, jaw-dropping moment when they found out it was shot at an iPhone. Whose idea was that to sort of?
We had no idea whether it was going to be eye-popping or jaw-dropping or anything like that. We honestly, it was Sean. I mean, it's Sean and us. We sat down, we were talking about it, and we're like, do we want to let people know that this was shot on the iPhone? Because if you open a catalog and you see, here's a movie shot on the iPhone, you're going to go, let's go see the Bradley Cooper movie. Because you're going to think it's going to look like shit. And we knew our film didn't, but we didn't want people to go in with that preconceived notion. And we went in, first question out of somebody's mouth is, what did you shoot on? Sean, holds up his iPhone, and, the next thing everybody gasps. So, we were like, okay, that's fine. We walked out of the theater, and our PR person came up to us, and they went, it was like 10 minutes, 15 minutes of Q&A, and we walked out of the theater, he goes, the press are in here, and so the buzz, started rolling immediately, but we embargoed the information because we were afraid that people wouldn't go see the movie. And so that, it certainly helped. Um, we
Okay.
just didn't want people to, have a preconceived notion. Our PR person did, however, say, well, this could help you if you play this right. So yeah, I mean, but we didn't go in with that initial kind of like, let's, create this buzz.
Back to Emily's question. So let's talk about the benefits of shooting with the iPhone. From the start to make a list of the good things. She asked about the relationship of the actors, especially
Yeah.
people who weren't experienced, to making a movie. Did you notice
Yeah, I
anything?
mean, oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of intimacy. People let you into their lives and into their worlds, because let's face it, we're all used to this. We're all used to doing this, and taking pictures of ourselves as part of our life every day. I mean, it's always this close, So for us to see it, I mean, people take pictures of us all the time. So for us to see it, it's a non thing. It's where it normally is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So for everybody, it was kind of like being able to just really be themselves. It wasn't intrusive in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I would say that the boom mic, when we used that, was probably the only thing that would be, you know, make it obvious to our actors that they weren't living a real life. You know what I mean?
So they were.
That's a plus. And the compactness of it as well was a really big plus, because I mean, when your sound guy is the guy that the team is waiting for, it says a lot about your camera. I mean, your camera department's always the last one to break down and be ready to go. And then but this was just, you're done. You take it, you put it in your pocket, you're done. The negatives were that we, power. I mean, these phones run out of power quick. One was always charging. We used 3 phones. One was always charging, and so the power was one drawback.
How did you guys back up data? Did you load to the cloud from the phone? Did you have somebody pulling it from the phone to a computer?
Phone to computer, we had drives. It was always Sean or a PA or somebody like that loading it.
Did you
Right
lose
on.
data? Did you lose something ever?
Not really, no. Not that I know of. God help us, no.
I That's scary to me that, like, it's Sean or a PA. Like, who's got that data? Is this phone?
Oh, wait, no. I mean, we had, Sean was actually dealing with it mostly himself, just because he was, and along with Sheechan, he was just very, very concerned about exactly that. But he, again, this is a 7-person crew.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, nothing was ever further than, look across the room. You're like, hey, where's my data?
So, we have another hand. Go ahead. Yeah.
So the question that I'm going to ask is all about technical, because I'm very curious about how do you run this 714 on set? I mean, did you do the Slack?
So we're shooting double system. We're shooting with a camera that's recording image, right? That's primarily an image thing, and there's a sound that it's capturing too. But then you're also having a separate sound man. You with me?
We weren't capturing with the phone at all.
Okay. No audio. No
No,
usable audio from the phone.
It's all synced up in post.
Okay. And so you're using a separate sound system with professional quality, like big movie quality microphones and recorders. So more money on sound. And the question is, for this, you need to slate. You need to do a clap so that in post-production, people can sync up picture with sound because they're coming from separate files. So were you calling shots like a traditional movie and slating everything with a real slate?
Yeah, we had a real slate for it. I mean, look, I mean, I think there was maybe 4 times or whatever that we would, we just use our hands, but most of the time we had a slate.
But people should
And
understand.
sometimes,
Sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
people need to understand that the reason you do this at the beginning of a shot is so that in editing, there's an image that the editor can look at where there's going to be a noise, and then they can take the separate sound and find that noise. And once those two things are lined up, then the whole scene will be in sync. Everybody got that? There are probably people who haven't done this ever. We have a video generation that doesn't understand this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that, yeah, we would do slates or hands or tail slates, whatever we needed to do. You know, I mean, it was
And so the crew is being run by an AD, or did you said 7 people? How did it actually work? You're all standing on a sidewalk. One guy's got an iPhone, another guy's got a boom. There's no boom man. Is it the sound man's operating the boom?
sound man's operating the boom.
So you got 2 guys. There's the actors, the director.
Well, don't count the actors. We're just talking about crew. So you
Okay.
got your director, you've got your sound guy, you've got your second cameraman, you've got your 2 producers, your writer, and our AD. That's it. Occasionally a PA would stop by. Now our AD, who is one of the best ADs I know, and we didn't have her doing traditional AD stuff, mainly because we didn't want an AD. The DGA, because Sean is DGA, was required to have an AD. And this girl is somebody that we've worked with before, and she was like, "Yeah, I'd love to come out and work on the film." She goes, like, "Sean's probably not going to, use me too much, but to follow the rules, that'd be great." But she ended up being a tremendous asset to the film, and even we just shot another short a couple of weeks ago, and she was fantastic on that as well. And she's somebody that we just want to continue to work with. But I think that we didn't tap into her resources enough on Tangerine. But she was our 7th Beatle. Yeah.
And what did she do? She was calling action, right? She was saying, no?
No, it was like that. It really wasn't that kind of a set. There wasn't much action calling or any action calling. We just did that for this last shoot that we did, but not on this set. It wasn't,
So how would it work? Sean would talk to the actors, get the camera guys ready on the sidewalk or in donut time.
Yeah, and then he would say action. He'd say action, or or the other DP would say action. But there wasn't the usual sound speed, this, that. It's like it was a dialogue between people, and that's how we got what we needed. But yeah, I mean, what Julie would do, Julie helped with the scheduling, helped with the breakdowns of our shot lists and things like what existed of our shot lists, things like that. And she was really a resource there.
Continuity?
That was Shi Cheng.
Shi Cheng, who was art director, meaning she did costuming, any sort of changes to sets you needed to do. Did you do much? Did you paint anything or?
No, but we did, we moved a little bit of furniture around, but nothing major. But she did the art direction, she did continuity, and she is Mama-san in the film as well. She plays the woman who runs the donut shop at the end of the movie.
I understand that Donut Time was open. I saw this in an interview all the time you were shooting, and if somebody came in and wanted to buy a donut and she was behind the counter, she would sell the donuts?
She would sell the donuts, and then I'd get them to sign a release.
So people were signing releases if they were in the background. Like, I noticed there were a bunch of people in the opening scene walking by the window. You don't have releases from them.
No.
Okay, great.
God, no. Hopefully they don't know that they're in those scenes.
Yeah. And let's, because we're getting to this sort of subject now, in my mind as a producer, let's talk about where you got the money from and selling the picture. But again, if anybody has a question, take a note. We're going to have another chance to ask him questions before Darren goes. But where'd you get the money from?
Mark Duplass and Through Films. Mark Duplass is an American director. He's been in a lot of independent films. He's a director of a film called Baghead, Jeff Lives at Home, a couple of other good films. He is the creator of a TV show called Togetherness that he created with his brother Jay. Jay Duplass is on a show called Transparent. He plays Jeffrey Tambor's son. And they have been producing films for independent filmmakers for a couple of years now, trying to make sure that voices that they think need to be heard are getting heard on a micro budget level. So they have a model that they use, that's guaranteed to give you enough money to make a bare bones movie, and not so much money that if you, when you have to sell it, you don't, you can make some money off of it. So they partnered up with their equity partners through films, which is Marcus and Carrie Cox, to give us $100,000 to make this movie. And the interesting thing about this is that Sean was waiting. I had done Kinyarwanda, and I was waiting for the next big, windfall. Sean had done Starlet and was waiting for $5 million for his next film. And we were sitting around with our thumbs up our butts, going like, "These, we're never going to see the money on these." And we remembered a conversation that he had had with Mark Duplass back in 2008, which was, "Hey man, if you ever want to return to the field and do a $50,000 film, I'll finance it for you." And we were like, "Well, let's see if he wants to have that conversation now." And he said, "Tell me what you want to do." And Sean said, "Well, I want to do a film that's set on Santa Monica and Highland." And Mark just went, "Okay, where do I send the check?"
So the pitch was just the location, but
Just the location.
but people know, people who've been in LA know that that's transgender sex work,
Yeah.
and sort of.
They also know Sean well enough to know that he's gonna, what he's gonna pull together. Anything that Sean had said, Mark would have greenlit. And so we had that money, and it was a very simple pitch,
And let me just do a definitional thing. Equity means rich people. The Duplass brothers have a relationship with people who've got their own money from somewhere else, and they're willing to invest it in movies they get their money back first when the movie sells to a company like Magnolia. But that's what equity means. Equity means rich people, right?
It doesn't necessarily mean, well, I want to be careful about that, because it's not, and it's not, Marcus and Carrie and Mark and Jay have been all very, very involved with, with this process, and it's not like they just kind of, they gave us the money and they were very hands off, but they've always been very, ear to the wall, for the entire run, because this is their baby too, and they invested time and money, and so
they took
not just rich people,
yeah.
They're people who were kind enough to give us money.
I meant no insult, but here's my point: is that they got to get their money back somehow. They're not a movie distribution company. Right. They gave you money to make a movie, but then whose obligation is it when the movie's finished to get them their money back, and how does that work?
And that would fall to the sale of the film, and the sale of the film happened with Magnolia. Magnolia ended up buying the film for about 3 times what about 2 times what we, a little more than 2 times what we spent.
Let's explain a little bit about how this works in detail. You go to Sundance, and no one has seen the movie. Literally,
correct.
No distributor. You guys have been cutting it. And how was it cut? In LA? Sean's living in LA, and he's cutting it himself?
Yeah. He cut it himself, and then brought it to a place called Different by Design to do post, and outsourced for a sound mixer and stuff like that. It was funny, the other night I was teaching a class, and one of my students went, "So wait a minute, you paid?" I thought Sean edited. They were like, "You paid for the coloring?" I thought Sean edited it. I'm like, coloring is not editing, and sound mixing is not. There's still money to be spent, on all of the stuff,
So you spent $100,000 to get it edited, but then you needed more money for colorization. Color.
No. We did 100. We did slightly under 100 to get we got it in the can for about 66. We got it all the posts done for about 95 to around by 90 or 95, and then the rest of the money that we ended up spending ended up being marketing.
So you got it.
Travel and stuff like that.
You got it in the can, ready to be edited for $60-something thousand, and then
That's correct.
And the editing process. You didn't have an editing room. He cut in his house, but you needed to
Yeah.
spend approximately another $30,000 for color and for a sound mix where you go to a special place where they have decks that can mix sound together in a room where you're going to recreate what it's like in a theater.
Right.
And that cost you roughly $30,000, half the,
Probably a little bit less, but because I think
yeah.
that there's a lot of other stuff there that like we're talking about Sean buying new drives. We're talking about his own need to do some ADR, those extra cab scenes that he had to shoot, like that kind of stuff.
So after you wrapped, you had spent 60, and then another 30 went to the point where you could show it to people in the state that we're seeing it now, and then you needed,
more or less, yeah.
yeah, and then you needed,
There was more editing after that. Once we got into Sundance, we were going to spend a little bit more money to refine, some of those components, to spend a little bit more time, chasing a missing frame or looking for, the right, the right sound mix or whatever, even if it cost us a couple of extra hours. And then we also spent money on music too. Not much, but we spent money on music too with this because it's got quite a soundtrack.
right, so after you got into Sundance, you showed it to the people at Sundance, and they saw it with temp music, or you had not licensed the music you really ideally wanted, but now you're in Sundance, and there's probably more money available to you from rich people, pardon the expression, to get to spend more money to get the sound that you wanted, so that when you go to Sundance a couple months later, it's in the best shape it can be in.
All the music that you hear in the movie now was in it by that point.
Wow.
We just hadn't negotiated every deal at that point.
Right. And you didn't have a music supervisor? Did you have a lawyer do this for you?
No, we had a music supervisor. Sean chose all the music. Sean found and chose every single track that you hear in this film. And then we had a music supervisor named Matthew Smith, who dealt with all of our contracts and dealt with all of the artists. And then the third person in this equation would be myself, who he'd email that stuff to me and I sent out a check. So, it was Sean to Matt to me, and then we landed some great music. 34 tracks in all, $1,200.
Wow. That's all you paid for the music rights was $1,200.
That's correct.
And you have
all of these artists were on SoundCloud, and it's basically like people who have YouTube videos out and they're just looking to be discovered. And so some of them would take $100 for the track or $50 for the track. Some would do it for free. Fortunately, Milan Records approached us when we were getting ready for the release and said, we want to do a soundtrack album. We want to pick 16 of these songs. And sure enough, now these artists are getting paid differently, and it's great. And our music supervisor, there is evidently a music supervisors union in LA, and he was and a music supervisors awards ceremony, and so he was nominated for Tangerine. So it's interesting to see how far this film will reach, and interesting awards that it is kind of cornered.
So you have all this paperwork that you're putting together, which give you the rights to have the music. You got releases from the people who appeared in the movie. You got permission from the locations to use their location in your movie, like Donut Time, they give you a release. But on the streets, you don't get releases. Like if you're walking by somebody's store, you don't. Or did you?
No, I mean it depends. I mean if it's even in fiction films, there's a little bit of fair use. Where you can get away with like passing things, and if you're going to set your film in a 7-Eleven or a McDonald's, then you need a little bit more paperwork that's got a little bit more functionality. But the people are more important to get those releases. People who pass by, they're more important to get the releases from than some of the locations. And again, if you're stationed in front of a place for a 5-minute scene, you're going to want to get a location release for that place. But things that are fleeting that you can't make out, usually not an issue. The interesting thing is, I don't know whether your students know about chain of title, but this is what you need to prove to the person who you're selling your film to that you have the rights to show all these faces, show all these stores, play all this music, have these actors perform. You need a piece of paper for every frame of the film that says, I have the right to sell you this frame of film.
So as a
And
producer, you have a file that you're putting all these location releases into, signed actors releases, signed music releases, and when you go to the festival and someone sees the movie and says they want to release it, they don't just want your film, they want all the paperwork to show that they're going to be okay, they're not going to get sued.
Of course. Exactly, of course. But then on top of that, you do errors and omissions insurance to ensure that there is no one else who can sue you, even if you have all the paperwork to, so you're covered, your butt's covered in many, many ways.
It's belt and suspenders. Your belt is all the paperwork, but in case there's a problem, the distributor is going to require that the filmmakers get a policy called errors and omissions that covers them in the event that there is some omission. You forgot to get something, or you didn't realize that calling the character Cinderella, that there was a woman named Cinderella who claims that you have defamed her, and you didn't mean to,
Right.
you didn't know she existed, but here she comes. The insurance company will take will any expenses of lawyers and settlement or judgment against you, the insurance company will pay after you pay a deductible.
Exactly.
So, but let's go back to Sundance now. You've got a finished movie. You screen at Sundance. You tell people that it's an iPhone movie, and then what happens? Do you have a sales agent that the potential distributors can go to, or is it just you guys?
Submarine, it was Josh and Dan Braun, who've worked, they were sales agents on Starlet as well as Prince of Broadway. They then started, along with ICM, which is Sean's agency, would screen for potential buyers, sub screenings or meet with once the film had premiered, and then once these meetings happened, then they'd bring us into the meetings, or they'd bring Lamar Duplass into the meetings, and it would get a little hardballery, if there's such a word. But and then eventually, we just got the good news that Magnolia, they were the highest bidder, and they were giving us the best deal, and we were thrilled to no end by the results.
Well,
But yeah, I mean,
let's
it was
back
our
up a
sales-
second.
It was our sales agent who initiated a lot of that.
I'm going to get to the how much Eamon gave you and how he gave it to you, but let's go back. Sales agent. So you've got invited to Sundance because you submitted to Sundance, and you have been told you're going in, and everybody on your team is excited, and you know that if things go well at Sundance, there might be offers to pay back the rich people who gave you the money.
Right.
And so you need somebody to handle those negotiations for you. And there are people who are called sales agents. You phone up Submarine at this point? How did that go?
No, Submarine was always on board.
From the
like heading in, well, not from the very beginning, but heading into. I see what you're saying. I'm sorry, I missed part of that. So, Submarine, once we completed the film, and once the film was accepted at Sundance, we did in fact hire Submarine. We did in fact hire Brigade Marketing.
How do you hire them? What do they ask for? What's the nature of those deals?
A sales agent is going to take a percentage, 10%, 20%, 15%, somewhere in that 10 to 20%.
If they can sell the movie, they get a percentage of the sale price.
Exactly.
But if they can't sell it, they get nothing.
They get their expenses covered, but I mean, I've not been had an experience with a sales agent that didn't sell a film that I was, so.
Yeah. So they get expenses and they get a commission, and that's negotiable, but we know roughly how much. And then you say there was somebody else besides Submarine. There was a marketing firm.
Brigade Marketing, yeah.
And what do? The sales agent negotiates the deal with the distributor and gets you the best deal.
Brigade Marketing will do all of our press. We'll do all of our press releases. Make sure that we are seen in all the right places, including the right parties, the right gifting suites. And they'll make sure that we are getting on panels. They'll make sure that we are part of the discussion. That's really what they do, is they make sure that we are part of every discussion that's happening at Sundance, and making sure that press is going to, cover our little film that nobody knew about yesterday, but suddenly is this iPhone movie today, and suddenly is part of a trans movement that is, taking the world by storm. And guess what? These guys are here. That's kind of what they do.
And how does Brigade get paid? Do they take a commission? There's no commission there. What are they, how do
They
they
do not take a commission. They get paid a flat rate. They worked for very little. About 5% of our budget, or less. And yeah, actually probably less. And they have continued, for that very tiny amount of money, have continued to champion the film and continued to work on its Oscar campaign and continue to push this film to places where it otherwise would not have gotten. So we were very, very grateful to them.
One of the nice things about having a good press agent or a good marketing company who is handling other films at Sundance is that they can send really qualified people who are representing more than one film. Were they representing other films at Sundance last year?
Gosh, yes, I think so. I'm trying to remember what. Now they're managing James White. I'm not sure if James White was in their hands then. The Overnight. They were doing The Overnight. They were doing a lot of stuff with the Duplass brothers. Animals and things like that. There was, a good amount of stuff.
So they're going to be talking to journalists about more than one film, but because your film is different than the other films, it's not a conflict. In fact, it helps you that the journalist is talking to them and they can say, and you should pay attention to what's happening with Tangerine. And so now you're at Sundance. You've got a team of a publicist from the marketing company or somebody who's helped you get your interviews with the press, and you're on panels and things like that. And you've got your sales agent, Submarine, the Browns, who are going to Browns are going to get you conversations with distributors. Do you start talking to distributors at Sundance, or do those meetings happen subsequently, or how'd that work?
It happens at Sundance. The best way for this to happen is for you to actually sell out of Sundance. If you wait past that, you're old news. If you wait past that, you're not going to sell for as much. And Sundance is a much better place to just sell the film if you can.
You can get an auction going where you can, even if there's only one person interested, you can create the illusion that Miramax is interested, that somebody else is interested. Okay, so you're at Sundance and your sales agent is trying to auction your film right there in restaurants and lobbies of screenings and stuff, talking to people, and they're going to make an offer. And you said that you got a lot of money relative to the budget. How does the money come? Did they give you what's called an advance? In other words,
they use an MG, minimum guarantee, which is a number that they determine as the least amount of money that they're going to make on the film, so they're comfortable giving you that amount of money. So they gave us, a substantial MG, which was more than twice the amount that it cost us to make the film. And then they struck a very interesting deal with us. I don't know how much your students know about the profit margins in films, but typically when a film makes money, at some point when all of the expenses are paid, the distributor will split the funds with you, and you'll make a profit. And to everybody, that sounds like a good idea, and then you realize that it's never going to happen. You look at Can Your Wonder, we still get our updates, and you're like, wow, this is never going to actually ever give us any money. The cool thing that we did with, and I don't even know if I'm supposed to be talking about this, but we did a thing.
I'm going to put this on the internet, so you better, if you're cautious, don't tell it to me. We'll do it off the.
Oh, I didn't know. Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what I'll do. We'll stop the tape in a minute or two, and if you want to talk off the record about what you did, we'll do that. Is that okay?
Sure.
or you can decide not to, and that way, if Magnolia, if Eamon's looking at this, he won't know that you talked about it.
Right.
Um,
right.
But your deal gave you a minimum guarantee, which means at the moment at Sundance, they actually write you a check for whatever they're going to pay you as a minimum guarantee. And at that moment, you sign the contract, they push a check across the table, and you're able to pay back your investors. Do they keep all the profit, or do you have to share that with the creative team? How did that work?
Our investors.
Well, if you make more money in a minimum guarantee than it costs to make the movie, it makes sense that the investors are paid back 100% of what they gave you to make the movie, but then there's some money left over if you've made a profit, and your minimum guarantee exceeds.
And then you split that in whatever fashion is appropriate with your investors.
So the investors get their money back plus maybe some interest because their money's
Yeah.
been out of pocket for 6 months or a year. So they get, they give you 100, they get 110 or $120,000 back. Now they're made whole, and there's $80,000 left over. What do you do with that $80,000?
They then they share that with us. I mean, there's a split. There's definitely a split.
What I used to try and do with go ahead.
The very nice thing that they did, and it's been mentioned in the press recently, was that Duplass's and the Coxes took their profit and gave it to the LGBT center there in Los Angeles. Just donated to them. So
how cool.
yeah, it was pretty cool.
When I do these deals, I try and give the investors a pretty big chunk of any profit we get because I realize the minimum guarantee is going to be, in my deals, that was really all I could offer them because the net after all the expenses are paid, there is no net. But
right, exactly, yeah.
So I would give them maybe half. I would try and give them at least half of whatever the profit was, but then the other half of that $80,000, I'd like to distribute among the creative team and sometimes crew that had worked on the film if I felt that that was appropriate. So that I've done a film where the minimum guarantee exceeded the budget, and I was able to give the actors who had all worked for minimum a big chunk of change for having taken the risk with us, but they had to wait until the festival and the sale.
Right. Yeah, and we did. We've done some stuff like that. I mean, there were a couple of bonus checks. Well, not bonus checks, points. I mean, there are things called points. That some of our casting crew had signed on for. So I mean, we definitely have that component as well.
Okay, so do people understand how the money flows, except for the mysterious part we're not going to talk about on tape? Any other questions? We're hitting the 90-minute mark. We have a question, yeah.
Darren had mentioned that like 66 grants in the can, but I'm just wondering if that includes the marketing costs, emissions insurance, production insurance.
So, right. So the question is about the budget. Basically, the 66 grand was what we would call. Well, I'll let you do this. The 66 grand you had spent by the time you wrapped production, but
right.
there were
principal photography.
Yeah, principal photography. But then there was additional money that needed to be spent in post. But we've raised some interesting issues. You had to get an errors and omissions policy, and there's some other things. Where is that part of the 66? Is that how did you budget that?
The errors and omissions would be part of the post funds.
So you get an errors and omissions policy because the errors and omissions insurance, what they do is they look at your script, but they also look at the movie, and the insurance company will quote you a price based on what they think the risk is. So if you have a McDonald's and you haven't gotten permission from McDonald's, there's no paperwork, they'll say to you, do you have permissions from McDonald's? And you'll say no, and they'll say, well, get it, or we're not going to write you a policy. Or if you don't get it, we'll charge you, $100,000 more than we normally would. You better get a piece of paper. So the errors and omissions policy usually doesn't happen until they can actually see the film and calculate the risk. And then errors and omissions policies typically are based on a percentage.
Of the budget, you mean?
Well, that's how, typically when I've gotten errors and omissions policies, it's not been a flat fee, it's been a percentage of the budget?
Yeah, I mean, it's in this case, I think it was about $2,000, maybe 2,500. You know, but yes, it's typically, I think it typically is part of the budget. Yes,
Okay, so
percentage of the budget. Sorry.
but so you spend a few $1,000s, and that's not in that you can't calculate that until you're into post. Um,
Right.
your other question about
Production insurance, like,
oh, did you get what's called completion insurance? Did you have a liability policy? What sort of insurance did you have?
We had production insurance.
So there is insurance that will cover a variety of different things. There's insurance that will cover the equipment. There's for loss and theft. There's insurance that will cover injury to third parties. You're supposed to have workers' comp for your everybody.
Yeah.
You should have in the United States workers' comp not just for your employees but for volunteers as well. You should tell your insurance agent how many volunteers you should have, which most people don't realize. But make sure you tell your insurance agent. So there are people who sell you this insurance, and do you remember how much you paid for insurance?
Yeah, it was about 1,500.
That covered damage to property and loss of
Yeah,
equipment.
$1 million damage to property. You know, yes.
But there's also what's called completion bond. Did you have a completion bond?
No.
This is an insurance that some films, bigger budget films, typically get, that you pay a percentage of your budget, and they will promise to step in and finish production if something happens. If the director goes crazy, he's going over budget, they will fire the director and they will come in with their guy and finish the movie, so that your investors have insurance that crazy things don't happen. And this will also sometimes cover injury to stars, like whether Paul Walker got hurt and died during the shooting of Fast and Furious 7, might have been covered by insurance. And an insurance company stepped in and either promised to pay back the investors the cost of the movie, or pay enough to finish the movie, but it was up to that's called completion bond. But you didn't get that.
Right. No, we didn't.
And so we're not going to talk about that. So any other questions about how the budgeting process went, or did we cover your questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions at this point? So, what's next? What do you got going on next?
We are shooting a film next year in Florida, as I think I've mentioned to you, since we do have that Florida connection. I will tell you more about that at some point. We don't want too much information out there on it.
But this is you and Sean going.
Myself, Sean, Chi-Ching, and Chris again. You know, and then another producing partner, and it will be private equity funded again, with a little bit of help. Yeah, I can't talk about that, but
Don't talk.
But we are shooting it next summer in Florida, in Celebration, and it's going to be another Sean joint. It's going to be a little bit dark, a little bit funny, a little bit heart-wrenching, and then we've got, some press hit the other day. We have a short coming out. He has a short coming out in a couple of weeks, and then we are working on just a ton of stuff. I mean, I'm working on, whether it be collectively or individually, we're working on stuff for the next 2 years, it looks like. So we're pretty booked solid.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Chi-Ching, I've heard, has a movie that she wants to do in Taipei.
Are we talking about Left-Handed Girl?
We're talking about the night market movie, which I think is called Left-Handed Girl.
Left-Handed Girl. Yeah. We want to see that get made as well. And again, I think it's just a matter of time. As long as, I think people are in the mood now to just keep watching Sean movies, and he's got like a trove of them. So it'd be great to just kind of be able to make all of them out, and do 1 or 2 a year and get them out there.
Well, if you are coming this way, I know that she has her own connections here. Where did she go to university? Do you know what school she went to?
She went to NYU.
No, she went to NYU. I thought she went to university in Taiwan.
Oh, geez, you know what? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Um,
I'll ask.
okay. But know that you know, I teach at the premier film school in Taiwan, and there are people here who would be um, more than willing to help out. Plus, we have some facilities that might be useful. We have a Foley room. We have connections with various uh, post houses here, et cetera. So if there's any way that we can help, just bear that in mind. It's certainly part of my agenda. Um, any other questions before we let him go? We're at the 90-minute mark. Questions? Yeah.
No questions, I just want to know that, you know, the iPhone stuff is great, but the sound work on the movie was just amazing.
Did you hear that?
I did not.
It's ironic that you didn't. It's because the sound in the movie was so good. The sound here not so good. The sound he said it's not a question. It's just a compliment that the image is amazing, especially considering it's an iPhone. But the quality of the sound is amazing, and I agree. I think that the lesson here is that you need a story and you need sound, and picture is probably, you know, it's important, but the sound just.
Oh yeah, sound is vital. And we went with the best. I mean, we knew, you know, we were going to make the investment on sound because we wanted the best guy working on it, because everything else was a crapshoot, quite frankly.
Let's talk a little bit about how he caught sound. He had wireless mics on the principals. Everybody had a wireless.
No. He boomed. You know, he boomed a lot. All of the street stuff was boomed. Some of the donut time stuff was boomed. He did do lavaliers for a lot of the interiors, but boomed a lot as well. I mean, he was doubling up as much as he could.
And I think I posted this to the links to the page about this already. But he used Shep's mics. He used highest quality equipment.
Yeah.
This is not, you know, low budget stuff.
No.
And I was going to ask a question about sound. This escaped me. Any other questions? How much did you spend on sound? Can you break out sound?
Oh, I know that we spent. Geez, I would say it was probably around 7,000.
For production sound, including the sound man, or that's just
No,
rentals?
Oh, for all, including production sound, like post production sound.
Well, I'm just curious. I just didn't know what the number was. Just tell me what you know. It's.
I mean, I know what we paid our sound guy, and then I know what we paid our post sound guy. So I mean, total sound probably about $20,000.
Of 100,000, roughly a fifth of the budget went to
Yeah.
sound.
Yeah.
And
I think it was worth it.
oh, I think actually, I mean, the image is great, and what you did by oversaturating the color in post and stuff, I think was excellent choices. Obviously, you know, I don't know what the alternatives were, but I just think it looks amazing. It has a look, and it suits the story and the themes. But I think that I think the sound. I agree. I think the sound is really what sort of pushes it into major motion picture land, because so many low budget films at this budget, you feel like you're subconsciously, you feel like you're getting a cheaper version of something, and you're never really sure what it is. But I think it's often the sound. So here was the question I couldn't remember: how much ADR did you do? ADR being the post production where they re-record sound because it was not good enough on set. They have to re-record lines. How much ADR did you do? A lot? How many days? Or
I think it was 2 days for ADR, and it was mostly done by our post sound mixer. You know, himself, who's folding stuff or doing it, you know, outside or whatever.
But
we did
dialogue? Did you need to?
That's not true. I mean, our ADR, like the dialogue ADR was done in Sean's apartment. Some of it was done by iPhone. You know, people just literally phoning in their lines.
Literally voting in their lights.
But yeah, I mean, so there was a couple of days of that.
But what percentage would you say of the movie was the sound crappy from the set because buses and wind and
No. The sound from the set was, I mean, it needed to be cleaned up a little bit, but I mean, it was great. I mean, I'm telling you, Iron Strauss is one of the best sound people I've ever worked with. You know, I mean, cleaning up that sound, I mean, yeah, there's going to be some, but I mean, he's so meticulous that, you know, we probably maybe need to clean up 5% or less, you know.
so for me, a final question.
Yes,
but I want these guys to sort of think about if they have any questions, because you still have a chance while he's here. Lessons to first-time filmmakers, both in general, but let's start with any lessons that you took away from this particular movie that you think, you know, about shooting with the iPhone or about shooting under these circumstances. There's something that you think was like, I wish I'd known that, or this is something that I really want everybody to understand about working this way, or
well, I think that the ultimate lesson for me is always, and it's a very romantic notion, but you know, if you want to make a film badly enough, there is nothing that should stop you from making that film. We should not be making movies on $100,000 budgets or $35,000 budgets. It's not the budgets that we talk about in film school. It's not the, you know, the notion of filmmaking to most of us. We're looking at $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million budgets. So it sounds like a, you know, like a joke when you say like, $100,000 film, you know, and then suddenly, you know, it's a film that people you know, can watch it. And so I do have that like romantic notion of if you build it, they will come. And if you, you know, believe enough in yourself, you can make a movie and all that hokey BS, you know. But mainly because I get so tired of filmmakers telling me that they can't make their movie because they can't raise enough money. You know, I do believe that, you know, you give me a hammer and a box of nails and I'll give you a movie. You know, I mean, just whatever, you know, whatever it takes is, you know, is whatever you're going to do. So that's always a lesson for me, and it's always a lesson to figure out how we're going to do that, because you got to be super resourceful. Yeah, I mean, that's always, you know, the lesson that I take away from this stuff. Just go make your damn movie. You know, that's what I say. Go make your movie.
I hear you. Any questions?
And surround yourself. The other thing is, because I get so many calls from people now. Of course, you know, people will contact me and go, and I like all the people who contact me. I like the people who contact me who want to make low budget films and high budget films. But I get contacted by people who are like, well, we know you can work with, you know, a very low budget. So would you and I don't like doing that. I like doing that with Sean because it's a bit of an adventure. But what I tell my students is like, don't surround yourself with the people who can do it, because I'm not going to be invested in most of these projects that are coming to me now. Don't surround yourself with people who can do it. Surround yourself with people who want to do it. And when you do that, you will make the kinds of films that Sean makes, and you know, have a resourceful team and have a team that's impassioned by, you know, your work. So anyway, I'm babbling.
No. I think that's. I think people don't hear this stuff enough. I think that if you're going to spend a few years of your life, you know, working on something, it can't just be a job. It can't just be a paycheck. It can be, but you're not going to make the great things. You're not, you know, we only have so many movies in us, and do it because you want to, and work with people who want to.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording now. Because any questions? Last questions? Got one. Yep. Oh, good question. We didn't cover this. 23 days of production, of actual shooting. How much pre-production? When, you know, your pre-production is unique, and we can we did cover that some, but when did you fly out and when did real pre-production start? When did you start putting people on?
It was 3 weeks prior to the actual shoot. Shi Ching went out for, oh, I went out for a week and a half. I came back, Shi Ching then went out and covered for a week and a half, and then I flew back out. So we just kind of flip-flopped on that, and then we started shooting. And then they were in, Sean and Chris were in pre-production through the research process, locations and things like that for a good month or two.
So it's a unique film in that it was such a small crew, and the actors and the locations and the director and the writer were all, swimming around together for a couple months, and then you came out 3 weeks before production, and Shi Ching came out a week and a half before production, and you went. And post, what was your post schedule? How long?
Started in April, lasted until October. Sean edited from April to and throughout the summer. September was really when we, kind of started going out to, well, no, I mean, August was really when we started going out to our post houses to get the post work done. That was done over 2 months, submitted to Sundance in October.
Sundance is January 21st to 31st this year, 2016. And so the deadline for Sundance was around October, November.
Yep.
So you had that in mind all along, that you were gonna try and be ready for Sundance.
It was our hope, yeah. It was our hope. We had no idea that we were going to even.
If you didn't
get in.
if you didn't get into Sundance, what was Plan B?
Submit to Cannes probably.
Which is in May, but you weren't going to go to Berlin.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go to
Berlin, yeah, probably.
Okay. But major festivals, Berlin's February, Cannes is May. Try and get a premiere at a major festival and create an auction at the festival where the rights are available and the distributors are there. And Berlin and Cannes both have markets where the distributors are there and looking to buy things. Any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording, but don't go away. Hold on a second. Don't go away. You're not done yet. Okay,
I'm still here.
okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Don't go